Hey guys, my name is Shobhana Shri and I come from South India. In this video, I'm going to share with you all a story that is very close to my heart. It is the story of how I fell deeply in love. In the year 2003, I began my high schooling in a co-ed school, and there I fell in love with a fellow classmate. It was not just any kind of love, just a crush or even puppy love. I had fallen irreversibly, irrevocably in love with this person, and no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't stop myself from falling for him. Now, this school of mine is a very peculiar school that really deserves a place in a museum because boys and girls, we belonged to the same class, but we would sit separately and were never allowed to communicate with each other. And therefore, this love saga of mine continued for close to 2 years. Towards the end of my high school, I found myself in a very distressed place. I was very sad and unhappy in my heart. I would cry almost every day and I never knew why. Now I think it was the pressure of not being able to speak with him for 2 years and the uncertainty of whether this person would still be in my life when I move on to college, coupled along with all my exam stress, was too much even for me to handle. And like I said, I used to cry almost every day and I never knew why. This was about the same time when a cousin sister of mine was watching God channel and she started sharing messages about Jesus Christ with me. At that point of time, I already worshipped Jesus because I did my previous schooling in a convent school, and so I already worshipped Jesus. I knew He is the God, but I did not have any knowledge about the gospel and the good news of Jesus Christ. Among the messages she shared, there were 3 main messages that really struck very hard in my heart. The first one was, she gave me a picture of God, who God is. God is somebody who never changes and He always speaks the truth. See, we human beings, today we speak one thing and then we change our minds and tomorrow we speak a different thing. But God is not like that. He is sovereign. Whatever He speaks becomes the truth. And God remains the same yesterday, today, and forever. He has given us all His words in the form of a Bible. And in the Bible, God has made us many promises. See, even with us human beings, when we make a promise, we are supposed to make it happen. Then imagine God, when He is promising us something, how much obligated He would be to fulfill His promises in our lives, provided we put our faith in His promises. The second message that really struck in my heart is Matthew 7:11. In Matthew 7:11, Jesus is preaching to the people. He's saying, you people, you have so much evil in your heart, you have so much sin in your heart. But yet, when it comes to your children, you know to give only good things to them. Then imagine how much more sure it is that God who is this complete form of goodness, there is not one drop of sin or evil in Him. He is this complete form of goodness. Imagine how much sure it is that God will only give good things to His children who come in prayer to Him. And the third message that struck me is, it's a saying, I guess, submission is freedom, liberty is bondage. What this means is that when you submit yourself to God, that is when you experience true freedom. Whereas when you decide to move away from God and be independent of God, that is when you will truly enslave yourself in bondage to sin. So these three messages were doing rounds in my heart and my mind, and I kept thinking about them. But I did not take the matters of my heart to God immediately, because the 17-year-old child in me at that time thought that if I go to God and tell him about my love, I assumed God would tell me, Shobhi, enough of this nonsense. You better start studying because your exams are very near. This is what I assumed in my mind. And so the weeping and crying continued for a few more days. Finally, one fine day, I really thank God for that fine day. One fine day, I decided I had had enough of all this. I decided that I had had enough of being this miserable person in life. And that day, I went to God, crying and praying. I told him, Lord Jesus, I seem to love this person so much, and I do not know if it is right or wrong. But I place my desires and my emotions in your hands. If it is your will that we both should be together, then you bring this person into my life. If this is not your will, then I do not want this person in my life. Because when it is not your will, no good can come out of it. So I place this desire in your hands, God, and I am not going to cry over him anymore. I am not going to be this gloomy, distressed person anymore. Post this prayer, I submitted all my thoughts and emotions into God's hands. And for 3 days, I did not allow myself to even think of his name. My mind and my heart were all focused only on God. Well, on the 3rd day post my prayer, all my female classmates were eagerly waiting for me in my class. And as soon as I went, they just grabbed me aside and they told me that he wanted to speak to me. At first, I was quite confused because for 2 years I had been pursuing this person and nothing seemed to turn out positive. And now that I have decided to let everything go, he wants to talk to me. So I spent the entire afternoon trying to understand what was going. Then suddenly I was reminded of the prayer I did 3 days back, that if it is God's will that we should be together, then let him bring this person into my life, and that I was not going to pursue him anymore. So this cleared the air for me, and then for the first time in 2 years, on Feb 5th, 2005, I spoke with him. It was a very brief chat, nothing more than 2 classmates chatting with each other for the first time. And it was amazing. What was even more amazing is the realization I had after that. The minute I put everything in God's hands and started to pursue God, things started looking positive in my life. And I felt liberated that day, that finally there is somebody who's interested in my thoughts, a God, Jesus, who acknowledges my thoughts, who understands my feelings, who hears me when I pray to him, and who grants my prayers. So, post this, my exams came and they went, and I bid goodbye to all my schoolmates. And there was a 3-month vacation time, after which we would start our college. And these 3 months with the best time in my life. I was the happiest person ever because now I was convinced in my heart that God is in my life. It is not necessary that anybody else has to be. Now God is with me, and it doesn't matter if anybody else was with me or not. God is with me, and that is enough for me to be happy. So I started watching a lot of God channel, started to learn more and more about Jesus, and I started spending more time with him. When my 12th results came, my father immediately joined me in a college in my hometown. And through a common friend, I came to know that he was pursuing a college in Chennai, which is a capital city. That's all I knew. I never inquired more about it. And every time I was reminded of him, I stuck to my prayer. I always kept telling God, Jesus, if it is your will that we should be together, then you bring us together. I am not going to pursue this person anymore. When college began for me, the first day of my college, I felt like I didn't belong there. I was surrounded by all excited freshers making new friends, and I felt all alone. On the second day of my college, I felt a familiar gloominess creep back into my heart. In my spirit, I knew there was nothing I need to be sad about. Whatever God does for me is for my own goodness, and I should actually be rejoicing. So I prayed to God, Jesus, I'm sorry I'm feeling sad now. Please forgive me for being sad and help me, Jesus, to be a happy person. On the third day of my college, it was a Saturday and a half working day. Towards the end of our classes, a friend I had made wanted me to accompany her to meet a friend of hers who was also a fresher but in a different department. I remember telling myself, Shobhi, enough of this gloominess, cheer up and be happy. It's time to make new friends. Saying this to myself, I got up from my place and I accompanied her downstairs. And as we were approaching this classroom, in the entrance of the classroom, he stood chatting with a few of his friends. After our initial greetings, I curiously asked him what brought him to my college, and what he explained after that was nothing short of brilliance. He said that it was not just one college, but 4 colleges that he was pursuing. And in the first 2 colleges, after his initial discussion with the admission authorities and after getting confirmed with them, just before the time of fee payment, his application was rejected without any notice. When questioned, they just gave a very lame excuse. In the 3rd college, they were happy to take him in, and when it came for fee payment, they were supposed to give it in the form of a DD. So when they went to the bank to get a DD, the teller machine was not giving the DD out. An entire afternoon and evening was spent waiting in the bank to get the DD, but the DD never came out of the machine. So when they went back to the admission authority late evening, he was going on a vacation the next couple of days. So he had asked them to come back a week later. So they all came back home, changed their mind, and now they all set their focus on one final college. They went there, secured a seat for him, paid the fees, and finally when it was time for them to leave, they wanted to check the hostel environment. When they entered the hostel on the campus, there his mother saw a scene that was very disturbing. She saw a guy take out a bubble gum from his mouth and shove it inside a girl's mouth. So they saw all this, they came back home, but this scene was so disturbing in her mind that she decided that there is no way she's going to send her son to a college of that sort. And so she convinced him that she was not going to send him. It doesn't matter even if they don't return the fees that they had already paid in lakhs. She was not going to send her son to such a place. Now, they did not have a choice but to come to the college that I was studying in. And even in my college, admissions were closed much prior to this time. But somehow, they secured a seat for him in the last minute, just 2 weeks before colleges could reopen. And that too without much hassle. When I heard that, I was blown away by what God had done. That day, when I saw him standing in front of me, I did not see the love of my life. I did not see the person whom I had loved so dearly for 2 years. Instead, I had a mighty demonstration of God's love for me. How much should God have loved me that He brought him here? I remember asking to God, God, did you really do this? I mean, this person was supposed to go to a different college with a different bunch of people, but God had changed the destiny of a person because I had asked Him for. And that day, in Jesus, I saw a Father who was ever willing to grant the desires of my heart. In Jesus, I saw a mother who loved me beyond all my flaws and imperfections. That day in Jesus, I saw a great friend who understood the deepest desires of my heart. And in Jesus, I saw a brother and a sister with whom I can share all the secrets of my heart and never be forsaken. And that day, I realized what submission as freedom truly meant. And submitting to God was truly liberating. That day, I experienced sheer joy. Every nook and corner of my heart was filled with complete joy. There was no doubt whatsoever in my heart. Every nook and corner of my heart was filled with joy. Every cell in my body was filled with joy. I had experienced sheer joy that day. That day, I experienced God's faithfulness and how sure are His promises. I was just a school kid back then. I had no big knowledge about God, no big experiences in God. All I ever did was put my trust 100% in God. And this God decided to take a day off and came down to answer the prayers of a 17-year-old girl who chose to put her trust in Him. How sure are His promises? I experienced a million things that day. I knew that nothing is impossible with God. With Jesus, all things are possible. Every limitation, every boundary, and every box that I was chained to fell off. And I knew that all things are possible with God. That day, I fell head over heels in love with Jesus Christ. And since that day, Jesus became my best companion. He became my best friend. He became my family. He became my world. He became my first priority. Since that day, I have been high on Jesus. Jesus became my daily dosage of drug. He became my driving force. He became my stimulant. That day, my search was in love, and I found true love in Jesus Christ. Today, you might be in search of love too, or you might be in search of wealth. You might be in search of healing in your body. You might be in search of beauty, or you might be a person in search of great adventure, good friends, a better life, a much better lifestyle. Whatever your search is today, I can assure you that you will find your answer in Christ. And I know that Christ Himself will be your answer. The person whom I have been speaking to you about for so long, well, his name is Harish, and today I am married to him, and we have a wonderful 2-year-old son. Until the day I saw him in college, he was my choice and my desire. But after that day, he became God's choice for me and His will for my life. Before I wrap up my story, I want to give you the right interpretation of my testimony, and that is putting your desires in God's hands and pursuing Him. The reward that comes out of it will be taken care by God. Our part is to submit to God and walk in obedience to Him. And what your reward will be and how that will happen, that entirely is in God's hands. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed my story of how I fell head over heels in love with Jesus Christ. Do let me know about your thoughts in the comment section below. And hey, do subscribe because I'm going to be uploading new content on how much fun it is to walk with Jesus every day.